I still have a dream. Today is marked in memorial celebration of a great man. This man was well known as the hero of many people in our nation. He was my childhood hero, still is. Maybe even more so now that I am an adult and see the conditions we face today. I grew up in a poverty with education and church my only company and comfort. The inspiration of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. carried me even in a group home. The director of the home shared with us a memory involving a sweltering summer day in the South and going for a drink from the colder fountain, for which her father frightened her by his response. I have a dream where the flavors of this life will be determined by their authenticity in relationship, their robust reality of character, and how well they blend not in color categories or fear, but in the fullness of sharing freedom, a freedom of uniqueness and diverse passion. It is with this lens in mind that I bring forth this message with presently pertinent speech adapted from what was written, delivered, and died for over 57 years ago. From the March on Washington to streaming digital, let us be transformed and awakened afresh. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 65 years ago, a great American woman rightfully sat at the proverbial table in the presence of her enemies, still hopeful that the Emancipation Proclamation's light had not gone out. Millions of Americans received it as a joyous daybreak to the end of the long night in captivity. But 157 years later, though the law has made us free, the hearts of hate still burn fiercely between free peoples. Manacles of friendly masquerade and chains of latent segregation. 157 years and many a spice sit on an island of loneliness, fear, poverty, and discouragement in the midst of a vast ocean of social media smiles, grinning faces, and thumbs-up fable tales. 157 years later, the isolated, mistreated, and enslaved flavors are found at the bottom and back of the pantry. So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful injustice and waste of love. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cook up something fresh. When the greatest chefs of this our republic, the magnificent words were written of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were setting the table for which every American was the fall heir and guest. This table was a promise that all men, yes, flavors and backgrounds, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has not kept their manners at its table insofar as her citizens of flavor are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the people feast over to the wolves and mangy dogs. All the while, the human beings of flavor are left wanting. But we refuse to believe, that the tables of liberty provided by the bank of justice are spoiled. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient plates on the great table of opportunity in this nation. And so we've come to flavor the feast and take a seat that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot in the hearts of mankind to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy and innate divinity. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of racism to the sunlit path of one free people. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of colored injustice to the solid unity of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This wicked winter onslaught, racism, and poverty will not pass until there is an invigorating spring jubilee of freedom and equality. January 20th, 2020 is not a small start, but a full beginning. And those who hope that the impoverished and segregated needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until all colored lines are blended into fullness. The flavors of divine cooking will continue bubbling until the table is set without enemies, only friends. That this nation will break fast the bright day of justice. Again, there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for unified freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred, unnatural change through violence. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative dialogues to degenerate into violent submissions. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force and ugly, segregated hate with soul force. The marvelous new subterfuge which has engulfed the human community must not lead us to a distrust of all wolf-clad people. For many of our brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot cook alone, And as we cook, we must make the pledge that we shall always provide invitations to those around us for to dine. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of diversity rights, when will you be satisfied? Well, you can never be satisfied as long as any human being is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of unspoken brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our souls, heavy with the fatigue of smoke and mirrors, cannot be seen first as valuable, second as human. We cannot be satisfied as long as flavor's basic mobility is from a smaller pan to a shinier one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating equal opportunity, but given notice after the meal has passed. We cannot be satisfied as long as a being in Mississippi turns to violence and a human in New York believes all things are permissible. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells, and some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of social brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little boys and little girls will be able to join hands with their fellow friends as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, humans, no matter, Jews, Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.